Recognizing the member for Esquimalt Royal Roads.
Thank you very much, Chair. And may I first say a great thanks to my colleague for allowing me this time. I'd like to ask just a couple of questions about Highway 16. The Minister knows we have canvassed this in question period and other opportunities. So as we all clearly know, in December 2012, the Missing Women's Inquiry and Wally Opal called on the government to commit to developing enhanced public transit system along this highway and provide safer transportation options for these communities. This was again reiterated by the 2015 Inter-American Commission on Human Rights report, the 2006 Highway of Tears Symposium, and of course has been reiterated often since then. Now the government has rejected the call for this kind of transportation option, but undertook a consultation process. And although we have been frustrated with our ability to get some of that information, there were a couple of clear things that emerged from that, from the consultation process and what we could glean of it. One, that meetings were focused on interconnectivity between communities, not safer options for women. And that it was declared that hitchhiking was not the issue, despite the fact that anyone of us who've experienced that highway, and I went and traveled it myself with my colleagues to experience it firsthand, and experts like Dr. Jacqueline Haller, who's doing a complete thesis on hitchhiking, were all aware of the fact that people hitchhike there every single day. Now, the consultations were done with about 76 people, but only 4 of them were Aboriginal women. I just wanted to set the context here for a couple of questions about this. Now, the Smithers and Morristown communities have said that they want substantive improvements to public transportation. I know this firsthand from these communities as well. The provincial government has refused to partner with them. Now, the Ministry of Transportation officials stated in December 2014 that these municipalities and the municipalities in this area would have to pay for any improvements to public transportation themselves. However, through you to the Minister, other BC communities get to partner with government for public transit. I'm not sure why the communities along Highway 16 would be denied that. And we know from the experience elsewhere in British Columbia that the ministry is a partner, a happy partner with municipalities, but apparently is not prepared to do that with Smithers, Morristown, or some of these other communities.
Minister.
Thank you, Chair. First off, I want to just acknowledge the efforts of the member from Esquimalt in relation to Highway 16. I know how much work she's done on this file and how important it is to her. She's quite correct that the commitment or the recommendation that was made was to develop safer transportation options along the corridor, and so we've certainly endeavored to try and do that. There are no easy, quick fixes to this. There just isn't. I know the member knows that well. We did conduct an extensive consultation meeting with about 80 leaders, municipal, First Nations, and so forth last summer. And while I know that there were some initial challenges in obtaining records in relation to those meetings, my understanding is that they were subsequently provided those records and so forth. Now, as easy as it as desirable as it would be in some respects to simply commit to a shuttle bus type service up and down this corridor, we have ruled that out. And we didn't rule that out lightly, and it frankly is not strictly a matter of budget. I mean, these are people's lives that we're talking about, and I take to heart the method by which and the manner in which the member frames this particular issue. It's not just about budgets. It's about people's lives. That being said, it's a 718 kilometer stretch of road from Prince Rupert to Prince George, and when we look at from every possible angle how one could possibly provide a shuttle type service across that length of road that would be viable, that would actually meet the needs of people along that corridor, it's very difficult to get to a conclusion that says a shuttle bus would work. This is similar to the driving distance between Vancouver and almost Revelstoke. telling someone, in a particular spot along this road that the shuttle bus will be there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon every other day, or every day for that matter, is I'm not sure going to meet the needs of that individual at that particular, when they actually need transportation. So that's the bigger challenge that we've encountered with respect to the concept of a shuttle bus. Now, what we are doing is we did provide $75,000 in funding to support increased training for access to driver education, safe driver and driver licensing programs for First Nations. This was identified as a priority by a good number of First Nations leaders that we met with. We also heard loud and clear that there was a tremendous lack of cohesion in terms of people knowing what resources are actually available today. And there are gaps, no question about that. There are gaps, but there are resources available today. So we endeavored to pull all that together into one place via the web portal that we've established. We've received good positive feedback on that piece. We also do partner with communities up and down the corridor. I mean, there's the Northern Health Bus, and I appreciate we've had a difference of opinion of its relevance in this discussion, but it is there to serve. We also have partner agreements in place through BC Transit with a number of communities, some of which provide service between their communities. That is available, I believe, about $1.5 million per year. Transit services between Smithers and Telkwa, between the Hazeltons and both Smithers and Kispiox, between Terrace and Kitimat, and between Prince Rupert and Port Edward. Those services are in place today. And we've also worked really hard to expand cell coverage, which I think, in fairness, is part of this discussion. It's the cell coverage in and of itself is obviously not transportation, but ensuring that people are able to, to use their phones, especially in moments of crisis and emergency and in need, is an important part of the solution. And we've made pretty good progress at expanding cell coverage through the network, and we're not going to rest on that front either until we've got cell coverage up and down every inch of that particular corridor. So. More work to do. I want the member to really hear me on this. I by no means believe that this file is closed and that we've done what we can do, and it's time to move on. The discussion with First Nations and with local governments continues, and we're very much focused on continuing to enhance service as best and as fast as we can through this corridor for the safety of everyone who live along this particular route.
Member.
Thank you very much, Chair. Through you to the Minister. Well, certainly the Minister will appreciate the fact that for people living in these communities, they need some assurance that even an expansion of service is something that the government is considering, because certainly I agree there are little pockets where there is some service, but in the case of Smithers, they have asked for partnered dollars to expand that. Morristown has done that as well. I know every community that I met with along that corridor between Prince Rupert and Prince George seemed very willing to come to the table and try and look for some solutions that worked in their particular area. The reality is that far too many people are hitchhiking. Even today, if you live in a remote area and you have to go into town to get a loaf of bread, a quart of milk, see your social worker, take your child to a doctor because they have a sore throat, you have to hitchhike because the service is inadequate. And frankly, I know that the Minister alluded to the portal that talks about the things, the other services that are available, but limousine service is listed there for poor people living in these communities on very fixed and minimal incomes. A limousine service certainly can't be a replacement for a shuttle bus service that's affordable and accessible and regular. And these communities, for Aboriginal women who are hitchhiking today to take their children to the doctor because they have a sore throat, they can't afford a limousine service. For the sporadic services that are available in some of these communities, they're not affordable for people on fixed and minimal incomes. So, I mean, it's hard not to become very irritated with the government's inability to at least come to these communities and say, we do understand that these things are happening. For the government to be dismissive, hitchhiking is not an issue. Of course it's an issue. You can't drive the highway without seeing people hitchhiking. And it would seem to me that the government needs to do a better job of saying, yes, we recognize that there does need to be expanded services. All of these communities know that there is huge resource extraction going along this entire corridor. Lots of money is being put into government revenue from these communities, and a social contract of at least returning some of it in public transportation systems, I think is apropos. Now, because I know that time is very tight here, and my colleague has lent me some time, I'd like to just say, without belaboring the point that I and others have made very clearly about the impracticality of the government's approach on some of this. The July 11th briefing note to the minister states that participants were told that the Ministry of Transportation would be creating a summary and further discussions with ministry partners, and that this would be distributed to those communities. So I don't know, has that summary been done? Has it been distributed? Has the summary been prepared and released to the public in any way, or is it going to be? So that is one part of a question. The second part of that same question, the government talked about discussions with ministry partners after the consultations. So what ministry partners are those? What has taken place? What is the progress on that consultation? And I guess last, what next steps is the ministry planning coming out of these consultations? Because a limousine service and just saying, yeah, we know it's a serious situation up there, but we have no clear declaration for the community that we are going to expand service, that we do see the need for this, that whatever barriers you think are up there to doing this will be resolved. You can provide transportation system in much more complicated areas than along Highway 16 in communities that want to cooperate with the government. So if the government could answer those questions, that would be great. Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, Chair. So first off, I I want to acknowledge the members' comments about hitchhiking. Certainly, I have never said that hitchhiking is not an issue, and I don't think she was implying that I had said that. But I certainly share the concerns that the member has expressed around the prevalence of hitchhiking along this corridor. I will say, however, that one of the key themes that we heard from a good number of the mayors that we met with in the initial consultation was that the ministries of justice and MCFD that have been dedicated previously to awareness and education related to hitchhiking and resources to help reduce the practice of hitchhiking. That a lot of those the resources that have been provided have actually had a desired impact, have actually helped reduce the prevalence of hitchhiking. When you talk to law enforcement up and down the corridor, the prevalence of hitchhiking today compared to 5 years ago, 10 years ago it's going down. So there's progress being made. I'm not suggesting by any stretch of the imagination that it's time to start celebrating or to again declare mission accomplished on this. There's a lot more work to do, but I think we're making progress. The partner ministries that we're working with on this, because the member is very correct in characterizing the solutions to these very complex problems are very much cross-ministry, require cross-ministry collaboration. And so the Ministry of Transportation works very closely with the Ministry of Aboriginal Reconciliation and Recognition, the Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Children and Family for certain, as well as the First Nations Health Authority, which has been a very important partner at the table in these discussions as well. I do want to mention on the member has mentioned a couple times now the inclusion of a limo company on the web portal. I very much regretted the fact that was included. I had hoped the member would ask the question in question period one day, so I could really clearly set the record straight on that. That was a mistake, no question about it. The direction that staff were given was go and pull together as comprehensive a list of transportation options that are currently in place along the corridor and include them in this portal. And in their fervent effort to deliver on that directive, inadvertently a link to an airport limo service was included. It shouldn't have been. That was a mistake. It was immediately taken off the moment it was brought to my attention. And the last piece is the member's question around the summary of actions and sort of next steps and where do we go from here. We certainly circled back with a number of the organizations. We've had ongoing conversations with a lot of the municipalities, with a lot of the First Nations. The Carrier-Sicani, for example, it was the First Nation that we provided the $75,000 to, have been a very important partner working with us on potential solutions and it bringing other First Nations to the table as well. We went back and actually met with the North Central Local Government Association, which represents 41 local governments in this region of the province, and so circled back with them in terms of the items that we were confident we would be able to implement, and those actions which we were still considering. And I guess I'll just again remember I'll end on this note that as I've said a few times now, our work is far from being done on this. The discussions with all of these First Nations, with local governments and other agencies are very much ongoing. We're going to continue to identify additional initiatives that would represent practical solutions to the very real challenges that are encountered throughout this corridor.